All right, so it is indeed my pleasure to do this next piece of the agenda. I met this young man, I can say young man because I'm an old guy still, and getting older, thank God. Back in 1999, we were both here at a leadership seminar being hosted by then President Dr. Mark Maurer. We developed an immediate friendship. It's unexplainable, just some of those things that you think back on and say, what was the click? And it just clicked. We run on parallel tracks as we participated in this blindness movement, he in Wisconsin and I in Georgia. He came to the National Center being the Director of Education Programs and really has helped to change the landscape of educational instruction and experiences for blind students, most notably coordinating our Youth Slam, which told 200 blind kids when they came here to Baltimore that they could pursue science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We created the landscape of helping our affiliates help support students throughout the nation. And he has gone on to continue the good work that he's done by leading this organization in such a dynamic way. He is the president of the National Federation of the Blind, who came at the time that the NFB needed him. And I continue to call him my friend, my colleague, my leader. Introduce you all to the president of the National Federation of the Blind, Mr. Mark Riccobono.
All right. Our nature as humans is to organize toward progress. Once we have met our basic needs, we desire, unless it's been conditioned out of us, to explore, discover, and build something that has previously not existed. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals." And that is for each of you who have dared to show up, to be part of this conference, to seek to redefine and to be remarkable as blindness professionals. So I would give each of you a round of applause. Thank you for being here and for making that commitment. We couldn't have a conference without you, but it really does make a difference that you are committing your time and talent to this effort and being a part of the dedicated core of people who are making sacrifices to build a better future for the blind is really important. Now, Winston Churchill said that to improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Now, of course, we know that perfection is not a realistic standard for us to try to meet, but his point is well taken. If we fail to evolve, we, in fact, will fail to move to where we want to in terms of progress. Change is essential in progress, and what is right for the time may only be partly right in the future time. If we fail to change while the world changes around us, progress remains elusive. In order to make informed decisions about where and when to change, we need to have some core principles that ground us in our work. This brings us to how we change as a dedicated core of professionals. The African proverb tells us that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Community is essential for sustaining human progress. It is my belief that the community of practice that can best serve us in our efforts to dare to be remarkable is the organized blind movement. In the brief time that I have with you this morning, I would like to discuss the outline of our evolution as blindness professionals and discuss a little bit of the next phase of our work together. And I know that many are going to play on this theme throughout these next 3 days. Throughout history, the popularized narrative about blind people has not been one of progress. That narrative has been centered on the success of non-blind people to invent methods to provide some meaning to the lives of blind people. It has been centered on charity, not on equality. The expectations have been low, and any success stories among the blind were mythologized as extraordinary. This was the foundation for the development of the vision industrial complex, which came into maturity during the last century in the United States. The lack of a true belief in blind people and a vision-centered approach has limited progress within this system to a culture that has valued blind people as recipients of charity rather than leaders of innovation. Fortunately, blind people organized and resolved to dismantle the vision industrial complex through the building of our own community where the culture deeply believes in the inherent dignity and talents that we possess as humans who happen to have the characteristic of blindness. This community became a movement as the National Federation of the Blind grew on a nationwide basis. Since 1940, 3 generations of blind people have cultivated, tested, built, and refined our own system to raise expectations and explore the limits for blind people. And those limits remain undiscovered for us. As we consider a 4th generation of our community, we must recognize that systems that are not continually built will go away, even if the reduction happens slowly. We must also recognize that it is much easier to tear systems down than it is to build them up. Therefore, failure to evolve can make the future rebuilding exponentially more difficult. Today, I am calling on each of us to recognize ourselves and to recommit ourselves to the revolution of blind-centered and blind-led professional programs. So let's talk about where we've been. The first revolution in our community building effort was the early experiments with blind-centered training. Blind people began by making small attempts to put our own shared philosophy about blindness into action. This happened through one-on-one mentoring, testing ideas, and learning by doing. These early efforts bloomed into what some called the Iowa experiment, the successful program effort led by Kenneth Jernigan to put these ideas into formal programs of training. Generations tend to meld together, and the effort of that first generation melded into the second generation, where our blind community developed more model programs, including innovative work with blind youth. This is best exemplified by the training programs that grew out of Federation state affiliates in Colorado, Louisiana, and Minnesota. Training centers that get credit for multiple generations of highly skilled blind people living the lives they want the world over. These programs were hosting transition programs before transition was even a concept in rehabilitation, and before there were piles of money to fund it. These programs intersected with work done by Federation affiliates in places like Nebraska and New Mexico, where the blind asserted their leadership, their advocacy, and their authenticity. All of these programs are represented in our conference today. The third generation of work has been best represented in the development of a new non-discriminatory system of accreditation, which the Federation initiated and entrusted in the National Blindness Professionals Certification Board. Parallel to that effort has been the development of blind-centered university training, innovative professional development like this Dare to Be Remarkable conference, and coordination of blind-centered research efforts, as well as the establishment of an open access Journal of Blindness Innovation and Research. While more professional development efforts led by the blind are needed, and we are hungry for more university training programs that are rooted in the lived experience of the blind, we are emerging into the fourth generation of our blind-led professional systems. So what's next? The emerging generation of work is building a mature community of blind-centered practice that continues to evolve and advance the systems we have built while forging professional relationships that foster greater cooperation and partnership. Our community of practice must value sharing our blind-centered wisdom with the goal of diminishing the harmful influence of the vision industrial complex. Those of us who are committed to advancing a positive philosophy about blindness and to protecting the dignity of blind people must unite around our common aim of deconstructing the vision-centered approaches that are all too influential even in 2024. So how do we build this community? The blind wisdom community of practice will thrive if we can value challenging each other to be better without falling into the pitfalls of focusing on competition with each other. We are truly stronger together, and our deep belief in blind people is still far too rare among the vast systems that control much of the money and human resources in the blindness field. Together, we can evolve and grow into an even more powerful force than we experience today. We are the envy of those first-generation blind professionals, but we cannot settle for what we have always done, or we will only make and be the shame of the fifth generation of blindness professionals. There are far too few of us in this community for us not to work together and to inspire each other to something greater. This community must be willing to test new ideas and recognize the value when those approaches fail against our shared wisdom. We must not be afraid to take risks and to evolve our approaches, because that is precisely where innovation meets freedom for the blind. In testing those new ideas, the critical element is that we share in our learning. We evaluate what we could do differently, and that we get right on with trying something else. As long as we stay centered on the belief that it is not the blind person who is broken, but the failure to find the right approach in the teaching, our community will continue to evolve toward being remarkable. Let me say here that new is not always better. What makes our community particularly effective is that we're rooted in some core principles, core philosophical principles. However, we must apply those philosophical concepts in ways that facilitate change. Unfortunately, all too often, people think that the thing to change is your philosophical principles. As we apply these principles in new ways, it is important that we not only maintain our values, but think about where to find inspiration to try new things. Some people are always seeking the new thing, and that sometimes results in compromising the basic principles that we have as a field. That road to evolving and building our community should never be premised on changing our principles. And yes, I said never be premised on changing our principles. Our community must stay strongly blind-centered, but draw inspiration, wisdom, and value from the shared knowledge of other communities. One example is the persistent idea that Braille is difficult to learn and even harder to become fluent in, especially if you begin reading it later in life. Yet, we have barely even utilized the best practices used to effectively teach reading in other contexts within our society. What happens when we apply the best practices in reading to what we already know about teaching Braille in our community? There are many other examples where we can borrow best practices and apply them to the shared wisdom of blind people. Our community of practice must also lean into the idea of blind pride rather than continuing to default to non-blind norms that place blind people at a disadvantage in terms of advancement in our society. So thank you, Anil, for asking people to raise their hands.
I've been conditioned.
You've been conditioned.
I said raise hand, I said stand.
Stand, okay,
Yes,
well.
I want them to be acknowledged.
That's not even less disability centric,
Thank
yeah.
you. I'll redeem myself in the next 2 days. Now you guys are paying attention. Okay, I see.
One example is that we should expect our community to grow the best blind leaders and administrators that you can find anywhere on this planet. We should expect these leaders to reach the top positions in agencies for the blind and key governmental positions affecting programs for the blind. Our community should invest in raising a generation of blind leaders who are not only highly qualified to lead, but who proudly tell everyone they meet that it is respectable to be blind. And finally, our community of practice must be prepared to be guided by the broader organized blind movement that is the National Federation of the Blind. Furthermore, Each and every one of us needs to be contributors to building that movement. If we stand outside the movement, if we wall off our community of practice from the diverse community of blind people, it simply becomes another system which is not truly blind-centered. And let me call out many governmental agencies in this nation which tell blind professionals that it is a conflict of interest for staff to participate actively in the professional network that is the National Federation of the Blind. But they offer those same people paid time to participate in professional efforts such as the Association for the Education and Rehabilitation of the Blind and Visually Impaired. I call for an immediate end to this discriminatory and harmful practice. Agencies should encourage their staff to participate actively in organizations that professionally benefit their development and growth. I also want to thank and say thank you to those agencies that already allow staff the power, freedom, and independence to make a choice to participate actively in the organizations that they feel will best serve them and the blind people they serve. And it is no surprise that the best of those agencies are represented in this room today. To be clear, the professional development choice of any blindness professional should never interfere with the right that the people receiving services from that professional have to make an informed choice about their own professional networks and services. Now is the time for agencies and agency leaders to stop preventing their staff from having access to our powerful community of practice within the National Federation of the Blind. Our community has been born from and evolved with the broader organized blind movement. That connection of being shaped by and contributing to the organized blind movement is the magic of our community of practice. So, do you dare to be remarkable? Well, the question, yeah, kind of weak. The question, we'll see if they get there later. But the question does make it sound much harder than it is. It is a choice. It is a choice to be blind-centered, a choice to challenge your own assumptions, and a choice to evolve in your own professional practices, regardless of how many decades of experience you have behind you. You can make that choice and inspire that choice today. You have chosen to be remarkable by choosing to be a contributor to our blind community of practice. Thank you to each of you for making the choice to be here and to being part of this powerful community. Let us take the rest of the steps required to give every blind person the opportunity to be remarkable in their own lives by gaining access to the training and connections that will allow them to live the lives they want. Let us go build our evolving blind community of practice. Thank you.
National Federation of the Blind. Live the life you want.